Hi guys! So for week 8, we read the articles Darkness Too Visible and Why the Best Kids Books Are Written in Blood. When I read the first article, Darkness Too Visible, my initial reaction was that a lot of the books I read as a teenager and a lot of the books I read now have dark subject matter. So I kind of felt like the author was speaking about me in a way. I'm not a teenager anymore, obviously, but I still read a lot of young adult literature. So reading this kind of put me on the defense. I kind of thought, like, really, lady, you're trying to tell me what to read? Like, I don't know if I'm okay with that. At first, I thought I could kind of understand her thinking in some ways. As a mother, I don't know how comfortable I would be with my child reading something extremely graphic or inappropriate. As a reader, though, sometimes I really like to read about the darker topics, and I feel like I can learn a lot from them. For example, one book I read when I was younger was a book by Sarah Dessen. I think it was called Dreamland, and it was about a girl in an abusive relationship. That book taught me a lot about why someone might stay in an abusive relationship and why you shouldn't judge them for it. It didn't in any way make me think that I wanted to be in an abusive relationship or make me think that I would stay in one if I was being abused. But it did help me understand what people go through when they are in abusive relationships. Connected to that last point, I really disagree with her statement that reading books about dark topics will start to normalize bad behavior. In the past, I've read books about drug addicts, and doing drugs is about the last thing I would want to do after reading those books. I think more often than not, books that deal with dark subjects show how characters deal with them and help readers understand how people cope with these things. They don't romanticize cutting or violence or drinking or drugs in any way. I think they just kind of show what these people go through when they do deal with these issues. I also think that by the time kids are old enough to read these books, they've already experienced a lot. They've probably heard about these topics, and they're probably not insanely shocked by a lot that they read. I think it would be a different story if these books were given to third graders, but they're not. When I got to her last quote, she says, "No family is obliged to acquiesce when publishers use the vehicle of fundamental free expression principles to try to bulldoze coarseness or misery into children's lives." I almost laughed out loud when I read this. Bulldozing misery into children's lives. I think that seems a little bit extreme, but I would be interested to hear what you guys thought of that one. Overall, I think this lady sounds kind of crazy, like kind of one of those lunatic moms you see on talk shows talking about bad rap music and why kids shouldn't read Harry Potter. I don't know. It was a little hard to take her seriously. So when I moved into the second article by Sherman Alexie, author of Part-Time Indian, he said that he thought her letter seemed condescending, and I would definitely agree. When I read it, I felt like I was being talked down to because of my taste in literature. I really liked his point about how, as a kid who suffered from poverty, physical and sexual abuse, he wishes he would have been able to read some of the books that people criticize for being too dark. I also really liked his argument for why avoiding books with dark topics won't actually save children from pain. He says, "In those days, cultural conservatives thought that Kiss and Black Sabbath were going to impede my moral development. They wanted to protect me from sex when I had already been raped. They wanted to protect me from evil, even though a future serial killer had already abused me. They wanted me to profess my love for God without considering that I was the child and grandchild of men and women who'd been sexually and physically abused by generations of clergy." I think this leads really well into his argument about privilege. He says, "They aren't trying to protect the poor from poverty or victims from rapists. No, they are simply trying to protect their privileged notions of what literature is and should be. They're trying to protect their privileged children. When I read this, I thought back to my earlier thinking that I could understand how parents might not or might want to protect their children from reading about difficult or disturbing topics. I think by taking this perspective and stating that they're trying to protect their children from difficult topics, people are ignoring the fact that there really are children out there like Sherman Alexie who have to deal with those things. I think that saying, I don't want kids to read these books, essentially sends the message that you don't acknowledge or don't care about the kids who are going through the things that are presented in the books. And you're not acknowledging that they really are out there. As a kid, reading about difficult topics helped Sherman Alexie deal with his own struggles. And I think that no matter what types of struggles you face or how severe they might be, being able to read about people who struggle with the same things you do, or even just reading about characters who deal with their problems, even if they're nothing like what you experience, I think this can really help kids learn how to face their own problems. That's about all I have, but I really look forward to hearing what you guys thought of the articles.